Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today we're getting into a topic that might not be what you expect, but is definitely worth sticking around for: hypnotherapy. If you heard that word and you're thinking, wait, isn't that the thing where people get put to sleep on stage or act like chickens? There's a lot of misinformation out there about what hypnotherapy really is. But trust me, it's way more than a party trick or what you see in movies. Hypnotherapy is a legitimate therapeutic tool that helps people break through some of the toughest mental blocks. It works with the subconscious mind to address things like anxiety, phobias, trauma, even habits like smoking. It's not about mind control. It's not someone else making you do things you don't want to do. It's actually the opposite. It's about helping you access your own power to heal, process emotions, and make lasting changes. And if you've been through things that make you feel stuck, or like you're carrying around something heavy that you just can't shake, this might be something that can finally help. In today's episode, I'm talking to Deborah LeBlanc, who's been through more than her fair share of loss and adversity. She's turned her own experiences with grief and trauma into a way to help others with hypnotherapy. She's not just talking from a textbook, she's lived this. And because of that, she knows what it's like to be in the dark places and to come out the other side. Deborah's story is intense. She was on top of her game in corporate America, but when life hit her with the kind of loss that would break anyone, she knew she had to find a new path. That's where hypnotherapy came in, not just for herself, but for the hundreds of people she's helped since then. And the way she approaches it is different from what you might expect. It's gritty, it's raw, and it's deeply personal. I think this episode will really hit home for those of you who've struggled with trauma, grief, or even if you're just feeling stuck in your own head. You're going to hear some tough stuff, but also a lot of hope. Hypnotherapy might not be a quick fix, but it's one more tool we can use to tackle some of the hardest things life throws at us. And whether you're totally new to the idea or already curious about it, this episode and this conversation has a lot to offer. As always, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on hypnotherapy? Do you have questions about mental health or things you've been working through? Don't forget to connect with me. Drop a comment, send a message, or join the conversation on social media or in our Discord. You can also hop over to the Patreon page and support this show and even get more involved. I love hearing from y'all, and your questions and feedback are what keep these conversations going. All right, with that, let's get into it. Here's my interview with Deborah LeBlanc on hypnotherapy, rising from the ashes, and finding your way through the hardest of times. Let's go. Hello, welcome back to another Mental Health Monday. Really excited for a couple of reasons. I'm excited for tonight's topic. We're going to be talking about hypnotherapy and rising from the ashes. I'm also still on like a astrology high of being in the totality part of the eclipse today. So I had a lot of fun with that. And I'm excited just to have you guys and be joined by an awesome guest tonight. So we've got the energy today. We're gonna show it. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate all of you. If you are here for the first time, my name's MommaFoxFire. This is Even Tacos Fall Apart, and we are going to have a question queue. I'm going to open it right now. If you have questions about the topic or about mental health in general, feel free to pop those into the chat. You can do that with a specific command with !Q and then follow with your question on Twitch. Or if you're on YouTube, just make sure to drop it into the chat and we'll get to it. While we are kind of getting things going here, I want to, and Bitemark is going to show us how the question queue works right now. Appreciate you so much, Bitemark. If you have anything else that you want to ask me, just make sure to drop it in and we'll get to it. So a little bit about Deborah, who's going to be talking to us tonight about hypnotherapy and rising from the ashes. Deborah comes from Lafayette, Louisiana, and she is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner, a therapeutic imagery master, and an advanced handwriting analyst. She specializes in 68 different presenting issues and has helped hundreds of individuals break free from debilitating, limiting beliefs, which then enables them to experience success, joy, and fuller, happier lives. Deborah's passion, enthusiasm, and motivating style has awarded her the opportunity to speak at conferences and hold workshops around the world. She's also the founder of Literacy Inc., a nonprofit organization whose mission is to fight the growing illiteracy rate in America's teens. Unquestionably, wherever Deborah goes, she travels to deliver one basic message, a message of hope, and then commits to turning that hope into reality. So if you are looking to connect with Deborah at all, I've got her socials for you. I'm going to drop those into the chat so that you can go ahead and access those. And Deborah, thank you so much for taking the time tonight and being willing to join us here.
Thank you for having me. It's certainly my pleasure.
Yeah, I am excited for this topic because it's one that I think doesn't get a lot of airtime. I think, a lot of people hear about hypnotherapy and they're like, oh, that's something that it doesn't really interest me, but there's a lot to actually dive into. So I'm really excited to get into this with you, and I appreciate you taking the time today for sure.
Absolutely. It's like I said, it's my pleasure, and it's a topic I'm passionate about.
That's what we like. We like it whenever people come here and they've got something they're passionate about. So the first question comes from Bite Mark, and that is, what is your favorite poem?
Oh my gosh. My favorite poem would have to be, I would say anything from Maya Angelou.
Oh, yeah.
Pick a poem.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a poem. And she's just my favorite. She really is.
Yeah, and she's got some great ones. She's got some really famous ones, but if you dig into her work, like she's written more than I think a lot of people realize. So I'm going to post a link to a page on poetryfoundation.org that just has a lot of her works kind of talked about a little bit, and it talks a little bit about her life as well. So if you're interested in checking those out, feel free to go pop over and do that. Now, your background... Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all really good. Awesome. Look, interrupt me all you want. This is all about you, so.
I was just going to say she was a very talented lady. Very, very awesome, talented lady.
Absolutely.
Really spoke from her heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is what you want in a poet, right?
Yes.
And in any writer.
Really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Now, as I was reading through your bio, the first thing that I kind of noticed is that you've got a lot. You've got a lot of things going on. Your background is very varied. So how did you land where you are now, and kind of what was your journey to get to what you're doing now?
That's a story. Yeah. I spent a number of years in corporate America. Mm-hmm. I worked in the oil field for a number of years. I was actually the first female executive vice president in fuel transportation in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. That backdates me, okay? I'm an old broad. I left that company and started my own logistics company. And what we did was monitor fuel tanks around the world, literally around the world. And I created, I'm not the one that created it. I put a team of people, of IT people together and told them what I wanted the certain software to do. And they were able to put together what I called Focus, a fuel ordering carrier utilization system. And I ran that for 25 years. And I'm, it was going along fine. Life was life. And then tragedy struck. My father passed away. My dad was my best friend. And not long afterwards, I lost a 3-year-old grandbaby.
Oh, my gosh.
4 months after I lost her mother, who was my youngest daughter, in a fiery car crash. A year later, I lost my middle daughter. And it was just one hit after the other. And I really began to analyze my life. What is this? why am I on this planet? I mean, you're not here just to experience all this suffering, over and over and over again. And so in taking stock of my life, I figured, life's got to be more than just going to work, getting a paycheck, coming back and saying, yeah, I started my own company, big whoop. What are they going to put that on my tombstone? Whose life did that change?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't answer that question. I couldn't give it a viable answer. So I sold the company. I went back to school, but how I went back to school is the interesting part. I was actually on the computer Googling how much concrete would it take to pave a mile-long driveway, a project I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the first thing that pops up is HMI, the Hypnosis Motivational Institute. And I'm going, What is this? Hypnotherapy school that sells concrete?
Right.
I didn't know what the heck is going on. So out of curiosity, I clicked on it. And the more I clicked on it, my heart started beating faster. And I had this little flag that went up in my head. And I dug into it deeper and deeper. And within a week, I was signed up. And I went through a 2-year program with them because I also got a degree in mind-body psychology, along with becoming a clinical hypnotherapist. I didn't want to be just a standard hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
And I found that all the suffering I had gone through, of course, going through the hypnotherapy school, helped me in my own journey. But I had to get past a lot of that before I even got into school. You can't focus on living, on breathing your next breath. You don't care if your next breath comes when you have that much loss that fast. Mm-hmm. So I had to be beyond that place. And it was just the right time. And I got into it. And the odd thing was, it felt like I'd done it before. It came so easily to me that, I was able to graduate with honors, and of course was on the, received the Director's Award, the clinical, I did 3,300 hours of clinicals. And so it was all so familiar to me. It was really odd. And the people that I see on a daily basis whose lives have changed because of it make all of that worth it. I know it was the right choice. And, I figured around here anyway, I'm from Louisiana, I thought about going into psychiatry, but psychiatrists around here they see you for 15 minutes and all they have is a prescription pad and they're writing out medication. They don't really get to the heart of the problem. Mm-hmm. And, and which to me doesn't help someone. Medication in mental health issues can be a source of help, but without therapy tied to it, it's like you're only solving half of the problem.
Right.
You're not getting the whole taco. You're not getting the whole taco.
That's right. Yeah.
So I just find that the work that I do to be very satisfying, much more so than anything I could have accomplished before in corporate America.
Yeah. I mean, that's great, like, to realize just in the middle of a Google search, oh, this is interesting to me. So how did you ever figure out, like, the connection between what you're trying to figure out with the concrete and the mile-long driveway did you ever figure out what that connection was? Like, where did that come from?
Fate.
Yeah, must have been. It must have been.
It had, yeah. It had to be because I mean, I would hypnotherapy and going back to school, in fact, was the furthest thing from my mind. I've been searching for where do you belong? What am I supposed to be doing? And nothing was coming. And then this hit. So I always say fate is what connected me to that school. It was the first accredited hypnotherapy college in the United States. And their courses, they have professors from universities from around the country. They're really phenomenal. It's a great education. So, and I continue to learn to this day, come up with my own therapy. I have, I do, of course, therapeutic imagery, NLP therapy. I've created chakra light therapy. So it has just been quite the journey, and I'm loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, to find purpose after that much loss, like, that is commendable. Just, that is such a challenge. And I know that there are people out there who have faced a similar level of loss, or similar level of tragedy. And I think that your story is just kind of a testament of, like, you can still find purpose and find meaning in life, even on the heels of something like that. Because you're right, like, when you're in that dark of a place, you don't care whether the next breath comes or not. And that's a real feeling that people can struggle with. And I've been there, unfortunately. And it's tough. It's tough to overcome. It's tough to get through that and get to the other side, because at that moment you're like, who cares if there's another side? Like, this is awful, and I don't care if there's another side. I just don't care anymore. So, I mean,
that's true.
I love that your story goes beyond that. And it even kind of like starts there too, because you have this full life before that, but what really kind of got you there is this compelling reason to do more and to find connection and everything. So that's really neat. But I love that. I love that background. And I think that sets us up for the topic for tonight really, really well. And we're going to dig into it, knowing that you've got this great background to back up everything. But before we get to that, we have an audience favorite question, and that is, do you have a serial killer or a true crime story that fascinates you?
Oh, my word. Serial killer or a true crime? Mm-hmm. Well, believe it or not, when I was building my company, I was working as a management consultant for funeral homes.
Oh, wow.
And while I was doing that, I was also a death scene investigator, which means that I made pickup calls for funeral homes and did become a licensed death scene investigator, so I could go behind the scenes and find out more about what happened other than just picking up the body. And so true crime, I saw a lot of it. One of the most interesting ones, I don't know about interesting, but it was certainly gory. We went to there were two actually. One that was we went to a trailer park that was out in the middle of nowhere, and the lights were on. I was with a friend who was helping me do the pickup, and they had requested two people. The reason was because the guy who killed his girlfriend, but he did it by cutting her in half.
Oh my gosh.
He was so wired up on coke, he didn't realize what he was doing, and he had a machete and had literally cut her in half. The bottom waist down was in the kitchen, and he grabbed her by the hair and pulled the other half of her in the living room and was screaming at her that she needed to get off her lazy and do something about dinner. He was wired out of his
clearly. Yeah.
Another very interesting, it's not a true crime, but it's one of the most interesting things I did see is a pickup we did in a houseboat. It was an elderly woman who passed away. And we walked into the house, and she was in an old bed that was kind of sway backed. And when we lifted her up with the sheet that was underneath her. And when we lifted her up in that sway, it was covered with snakes, full of snakes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we picked up the sheet, and I'm trying not to drop it, okay?
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I got snakeophobia. So we're tying the sheet close, and I'm just going, breathe, Deborah, breathe, breathe. And the shutters on her windows started banging open and closed, open and closed.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I just looked at Chuck, was the name of the guy that was with me. I said, we're out of here, dude.
Yeah.
Like, now.
Bye.
Now. We're out of here. Okay. The cause of death was she's old. All right.
Yeah.
And like any one of the snakes there were moccasins, there were pythons. It was just a pit of snakes.
Wow. Now, did they have access into into the boats? Were they her pet snakes?
I don't think so. I mean, no, I don't think so. Because there had to be every form of snake I knew that lived in the basin, in the Chaffalaya Basin. I mean, poisonous snakes, non-poisonous snakes. No, they were not her pets.
Oh my gosh. Oof.
She had been dead for about a week. So she was her skin was slipping.
Yeah.
And which is why we had to lift her with the sheets. Yeah. And so I think they just collected under her body. Mm-hmm. And
that was just a den. It was just a way for them to stay.
It was, yes. I'm glad that bed was sway backed, because had it been even and we lifted her up,
they would have gone everywhere. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah. I like snakes, but surprise snakes are a whole other thing. I agree. We do have pet snakes, and so that's why I was asking, like, were these her pets or something? But I mean, first of all, ours are under lock and key. Like, they're not even venomous, and they are locked. Their cages are all locked. So, but yeah, if you're not aware of them, or if they're underneath something and you're shocked by it, like, yeah, that's wild. That's wild. I mean, I guess just because it was a boat and they had a little bit better access to it, and
they did.
Yeah.
They did.
That's wild. So my grandfather worked for a funeral home, and he, I don't think he was a death investigator, because whenever he would go pick up a body, I think it was usually from a morgue, and he just brought it back for the service to their funeral home. But yeah, he lots of different adventures that he went on to pick up a body hours and hours and hours away. And he loved audiobooks, and so he would listen to all these audiobooks and everything on his way back. And I never really got into audiobooks, but my sister really likes audiobooks and went on a lot of trips with him also. So that was something that I never thought it was weird until it would come up to one of my friends or something, like, oh yeah, Grandpa's going to pick up a body. And they're like, what? Because it was normal. It was just normal for me. Like, I don't know.
Right.
It's just what he does.
Somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good point. I wonder if decomposition brought rodents, which brought the snakes, and then they realized there was free rodent delivery. Yep, and a place to stay. Yeah, good point.
I'm sure.
Yep, yeah, probably.
Well, except the snakes were not under her body. They were under the sheets.
Yeah.
Which is what was really fascinating to me. You know, if it had been something where they were seeking immediate warmth, it wasn't even in the wintertime out here, you know that, down here, we have 1 day of winter when it gets to be 35, and that's about it. So but they were under the sheet. So I don't know, but I just
Fascinating.
know I got out of there quick.
Yeah. Bye.
We had to put her in a boat. You know, we had to put her,
Mhm.
and let me tell you what, I made sure my end was tied up really tight. And no.
Yeah, yeah. I don't blame you. I don't blame you for getting out of there. What a fascinating job to do. Like just to get exposed to all of that. And yeah, that's wild. All right, so getting on to our topic tonight of hypnotherapy and rising from the ashes. Like we talked about, you have faced significant hardships, and not only the ones that we just talked about with the loss, but also childhood abuse and other personal struggles as well. So, how did you? I know we just talked about kind of the path to get to what you were doing, but how did you find the strength to even start to rise from those challenges? And what advice do you have for others who might be going through similar experiences and going, I don't know what to do from here?
Well, it depends on the challenge. I mean, I was raised by a single mom. By the time I was from 8 until I was 16. I actually got married at 16. Big mistake to every listener out there. Don't do that. But I stayed married 35 years before I, and had my 3 daughters, and I have one left. But when you're dealing with a childhood abuse, it's a matter of realizing that the person that's doing the abuse is the problem. You're not.
Yeah.
You are. I knew my mother was sick. She was mentally. She was undiagnosed manic depressive. That's what she was, and that was back in the day when you could doctor hop, and she would hop from one doctor to another to get anything to numb her emotions when she and my father split up. And I was just her. No, I was not her sounding board. I was her beating board. So I protected my brother and my sister, but I grew up and grew out of that, never blaming her, for never having a normal childhood. I saw her as a sick woman. I saw my brother and sister as 2 that I had to protect, and her as someone I needed to take care of. So she died 30 years ago, but she was in such poor health, which she had kind of done to herself, and not suicide. She would never have done that. She was too Catholic for that. She was just, she was just, she had a perforated bowel. She was, she had an enlarged heart. She died of congestive heart failure. But so you have to go through that and stop seeing yourself as a victim, and get past that. That was that person's life. You played a part in it for whatever reason. You played a part in it, but that doesn't mean that's where you have to stay stuck all of your life.
Yeah.
As far as for deaths are concerned, you have to go through your mourning period, and that is different for everybody. I went through some very, very dark days, and I couldn't, the way I deal with pain, physical and mental, is I pull into myself. I didn't want to talk to anybody. My sister, who's 10 years younger than I am, and I keep reminding her, I changed the diapers. You quit talking to me that way, because I changed the diapers. But she would say, you should see a counselor. You should see a counselor. And I said, there is nothing a counselor can tell me that will change the fact that these people are dead. That she can't bring them back. And I don't want to talk to anybody about it. I needed to get through my pain my way. And and I did up to a point, and then it became it drug on for so long. I mean, it drug on for 3 years, 4 years. I went and saw a psychologist, and they put me on antidepressant medication, and which helped kind of kick me out of that really dark hole.
Yeah.
And I stayed on those for about a year, and then I was able to, I was out of the hole. And I still have triggered, birthdays, holidays that are still trigger days for me, but nothing like it was before.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that about the antidepressants too, because I think a lot of people view antidepressants as like, once you're on them, you can't get off of them. And in my case, so I took antidepressants when I had postpartum depression. And it was one of those things that I really did just need the chemical rebalance. And once I got that, I was able to get back off of them. And sometimes you just need something to give you that temporary boost to say like, oh, right, it's not always this bad. Like, right, I'm not stuck here. And then you can get back off of them. Now, that's not to say that things like chronic depression, major depressive disorder, there's all kinds of things that could require long-term treatment. And that may include medication, and that's okay. I'm not saying not to take antidepressants long-term. I'm saying that don't be afraid of them either. There's the like, oh, I shouldn't be on medication camp. And then I'm scared to take medication camp. And you got to kind of like, just go right in between and do what works for you, because it's going to be different. It'll be different for every person. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I think a lot of people have a little bit of fear in their minds about. But yeah, sometimes it is just kind of that temporary boost. But, it's no wonder that you have these trigger moments. Of course, I mean, I think everyone would anytime you have a major loss. Like, I still, whenever my grandfather's birthday comes up, I'm like, oh, it's kind of a sad day. Like, and that wasn't, you expect to lose your grandparents in your life, right? You don't expect to lose your children. I don't expect to lose my children, and I hope that I don't. But if I do, like, I can't imagine things like their birthday or holidays would be hard forever, I would think, and I think it's unreasonable to think that you're just going to coast on by forever without one of those moments, right?
Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was only about 2 years ago that I was able to start looking at pictures of them again and videos, of family gatherings and stuff like that, and be able to laugh at some of their antics and just appreciate who they were. It took me that long to be able to look at them.
Yeah, yeah.
I still cannot drive down the road where my daughter got into the car accident when her car hit a building. She lost control of it. It hit the side of a building and burst into flames.
Oh my gosh.
So I couldn't even see her body.
Huh.
And I was closed casket, and I still am not, I refuse to drive down that road.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. That has to be tough. Impossible even.
Yeah.
So you've managed to kind of take these tragedies and form them into ways of serving others through hypnotherapy. So how do you channel your own pain and struggles into helping others find hope and healing, maybe a little faster than you were able to?
I think one of the pluses is that I understand them. I understand the language they're speaking and the unspoken things that they're not saying. I can see the pain in their eyes. I can understand the depression. I can understand childhood abuse. I can understand them dealing with death. There's just, it's really something. The whole circle of life brings me to just about every element except for sexual abuse, which, thank you God, I didn't experience in my lifetime. But I'm able to connect with them on a very real level. So I write all of my hypnotherapy scripts and I tie them directly to them, to their situation. It's not a canned deal where, or where one shoe fits all.
Yeah. Now, when you say hypnotherapy script, can you describe what you mean by that?
When I do a script, the first thing that I do is to help a person the first thing I do is a suggestibility questionnaire. I want to find out if you're more left brain or right brain, because you take in information from the world differently if you're more right brain or more left brain. Or you may be a somnambulist. You may be somewhere right in the middle. And again, the words that I use in hypnotherapy varies depending on your suggestibility. So I'll use a deep breathing technique to begin with. And then I use a deepener, which is often imagery that I'll use. And then the script itself starts talking about the problem that they're facing and that it's not the world as a whole. It is only part of their world, and they can conquer. They are there because they made time for themselves. No one needed them at that moment. No, they didn't have to be anywhere. They didn't have to even think. All they have to do is close their eyes, breathe deeply, relax, and listen to my voice. And I take them out of that place of, I'm a victim, I'm suffering, to a calmer place and help them realize that healing actually can happen from within. All I am is a facilitator.
Yeah.
We all have the ability to heal from our subconscious mind. How everyone calls mind over matter. It is using your subconscious mind to really get to the crux of the situation. And I'm just the facilitator. So say you're coming to me with agoraphobia. Then I will talk specifically about what you feel like when you're walking towards the front door of your house. When there's a situation that comes up that you have to go to the front door of your house and open that door. I talk about how you feel that way. And then I'd walk them through actually opening that door, seeing them take a step out. I've had many people come to me for that problem. And I've had some that were so severe they could not get out of their house. And now they're volunteering for different organizations, around the city. So it all has to do with that individual and what is important to them.
Yeah. That's really neat. And it makes sense. You wouldn't want to just keep using the same thing if they feel a different kind of fear than someone else who's facing the same issue. You don't want to use kind of the same language with them. So you have the suggestibility questionnaire. So is not everyone like able to be hypnotized? Is that what that means? Or is it just a different approach that you take depending on whether they're left brain, right brain, etc.?
It's just a different approach.
Yeah.
Now, some people can come in and on a dare say, and they, like, I dare you to hypnotize me. Because a lot of people are mistakenly think that hypnotherapy is like mind control. And it's so far from that. So it's like you can't even get them into deep breathing because you see this little smirk on their face. It's like, go ahead, do
Not
your
gonna
thing.
get me. Yeah.
Yeah. but I don't play I'm not here to play games. And there only have been a couple of people like that who kind of, and I can spot them usually when they set up one appointment, because I do my appointments by packages, but when they set up one appointment, it's usually on a dare, and that's an expensive dare.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and I'm sure they're coming in also because they're not necessarily understanding that hypnotherapy is different from like entertainment hypnosis, right? So, can you talk a little bit about that? How is hypnotherapy different from stage hypnosis or entertainment hypnosis? What's different about it?
Usually with stage hypnosis, it's very easy to do stage hypnosis because everybody, no matter the suggestibility, will, for example, I'm going to give you an example. If you can have a crowd of people hold both hands out like this, all right? And you can say, now flip them palm up. And in one hand, you have them close their eyes. And you have one hand, I'm going to put 3 dictionaries in your hand. And in your left hand, I'm going to tie 4 large helium balloons in there. Okay, so on goes the first dictionary into your right palm. And that book gets heavier. And then the next one gets there. Feel the heavy. It's 600 pages long. The third one goes on top, and it's 1,000 pages long. Now that second balloon is going up there. It's on your wrist, boy, and it's just pulling it up because it's just here goes the third one. Now we're going up. And when you have them open their eyes and they realize they're like this, the ones with the books down here and the one with the helium balloon is up here. It's all in suggestibility, but it's not like saying I can't hypnotize somebody to do something that they would not normally do in everyday life.
Right.
And I always do this when I count somebody down in hypnosis, and I go 0 and snap. I'm snapped out today. Okay, and snap or I'll use this if I get snapped out. I use that. I go 0 and deep sleep. And I'll go, every time you hear me say the word deep sleep for the purpose of hypnosis, and only with your permission, will you enter this deeply relaxed state or 10 times deeper. So it's always with their permission.
Yeah.
And it never goes against anybody's will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not something like, yes, you're helping them work through mental blocks and that kind of thing, but you're not like you said, you're only doing things that they would already be willing to do if they kind of had the power of suggestion in their own mind already to do them and to kind of feel that way. So are there any risks or side effects associated with undergoing hypnotherapy? And then also, I guess, along that same vein, how can someone make sure they're working with a qualified and reputable hypnotherapist versus, just going in and seeing someone who maybe doesn't have the right qualifications?
That's a very good question. Which one to hit first? Which one do you want me to answer first?
Well, we can break it into 2. Let's break that one into 2. So the first part of that was what side effect, are there any side effects or any risks to hypnotherapy? We'll start there.
There are no risks to hypnotherapy. There are risks to a somnambulist who can wind up in a state of hypnosis without them knowing it. A somnambulist is highly suggestible. You'll see them often zone out when they're driving, more times than not. But I can spot that in a somnambulist when I'm working with them and teach them how to count themselves out when they find themselves zoning out in a conversation or zoning out, you're sitting watching a movie and you're watching a movie and then something happens and you jump
Yeah.
at something that you were hypnotized at what was happening in that movie.
Interesting.
And so it's being able to count themselves out. That's the only downside to being a somnambulist, is that they can be hypnotized by anything. But as far as for an emotional suggestible or a physical suggestible, no. And there are no downsides to being hypnotherapy, except for people that want to quit smoking. Be sure you want to quit smoking. Be sure you want to quit smoking, because you'll quit. You'll quit. So, it's a matter of being true to yourself. What is it that you really want? What do you really want? Some people will come to me and say, I want to quit smoking. They really don't. They really don't. Because I'll offer two different things. One, I can get you to stop in one session. And I always do that one session in threes, because I do the first one is the cessation. The second one is to handle any of trigger objects that could, like somebody that drinks coffee or after they eat, that handles any triggers. And the third one is just what I call a triumph session, where they're going to be triumph not only over that, but over anything that they go to tackle in life. Or I offer a heavy smoker, someone that's smoking 3 to more packs a day, that can go through nicotine withdrawal severely, where I have them break it in half. So they're done over a 6-week session. But after week 3, that's your cutoff time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine if you're trying to do something like quit smoking and you're going to go through withdrawals, you really do want to kind of lay that out a little bit longer. So, I mean, it's good to keep that in mind. And I love this question also from the chat. Bitemark says, how can you know if you would be a good candidate for hypnotherapy? And I love that. So is there someone who might not be a good candidate? Is everyone a good candidate? What's the deal there?
Everyone who wants to have a problem solved in their life, a legitimate problem, is a good candidate for hypnotherapy. Because I deal with analytical types, I deal with emotional, people who really hate losing control over themselves, over situations, physical suggestibles who are highly suggestible, and with somnambulists. So I deal with different personality types, and I have, unless they are forcing themselves not to go into that state of relaxation, like the two people I talked about earlier, anyone is a good candidate for hypnosis.
Yeah. If you're willing to really try.
Yes. And to answer your second question, that's an excellent question. There's a difference between a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, and a clinical hypnotherapist. Okay. A hypnotist is what you will typically see on stage.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that do entertainment. Now, a hypnotherapist, you have to be careful, because you want to ask questions like, where did you go to school? How long did you go to school? How many clinical hours did you have? Because some people do hand out certificates for hypnotherapy, for a hypnotherapist certification over a weekend.
Yeah.
So it's up to the person to ask for the qualifications. Where did you go to school? Is that school accredited by the Department of Education? How long did you go to school? You don't want to see anybody that has not been in school longer than minimally a year. Minimally a year. And your highest, surest bet that will get you the fastest results is going to be a clinical hypnotherapist, because they've been studying mind-body psychology along with hypnotherapy. So they have they use CBT, DBT, different other modalities of therapy besides just hypnotherapy.
Yeah. It's interesting. I guess I realized that people will just hand out degree type certificates and that kind of thing, if you give them money to do so. But yeah, I mean, you got to look into the credentials just like you would any therapist that you're going to look into or that you're thinking about going. Just make sure that they're legit for sure. Now, here's a question from Pete. Pete says, how important is keeping your room clean? And Pete, I would love to know, like, what context are you asking? Are you talking about like for your mental health, or is that something that hypnotherapy can help with? Give us a little more context. But I'll say, like, I'm not a big, you have to keep your room clean. I've got 2 kids, and I try to help my 10-year-old keep his room fairly picked up. My 17-year-old, I barely go in his room at this point. And obviously, like, my room is not the most organized. It is clean. It's not like dirty, but it's clean. But it's not super organized or anything. For mental health. Okay, so how important is keeping your room clean for mental health? I'll say, and then I'll pass it over to you, Deborah, but I'll say, like, I think it depends on you as a person. If cleanliness drives you, or if dirtiness drives you a little bit crazy, then keep it clean. And if it doesn't drive you crazy, then, maybe it doesn't have to be super organized. Keep it clean for germ purposes, but if you don't have to be super organized, then live your life how you want to. Now, if you are under the age of 18 and you still live with a parent, keep it as clean as your parents want. And Deborah, I'll give you a crack at that one too.
Great answer. Well, I'm going to have to refer to my husband on this one because it's a great example. My home is clean. My husband is the type of person that for him to remember that he has a certain object, it has to be laid out somewhere. Mm-hmm. So everything he owns, when we first got married, this man is the love of my life. He really is. Was spread out everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I would wind up picking it up and putting it in drawers, and he'd panic. Where was it? Where was it? Yeah. And I'd have it right here. I had it right here. And I had to teach him in a very gentle way because that was a psychological issue for him. He has to see it to know it's still there. Because if not, he'll buy another one or he'll go into a panic because he can't find it. I had to very gently teach him, if you put it in the same place every time when you're going to need it, you'll know exactly where to go. Mm-hmm. And it took a while for that to sink in. And I give him some play. There are a couple of tables that I give him play on where you can put your stuff out here. But if it starts getting piled up, I'm going to come and clean house. I'm gonna swoop in and just, it's not gonna, no. So, but of course it was done with love and gently. Yeah. But I think if things are orderly for me, it helps my mind stay orderly. If I'm in chaos and I don't know where my things are, then I'm spending more time looking for them than I am doing the work that matters the most. But that's me. Yeah. Some people can live in that chaos. My husband functioned just fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's something that I work with my 10-year-old on, because he will set things down. And it's not that he wants them to be in a certain spot. It's that he's done with them. And he is a little tornado. I mean, he comes in, it doesn't matter. Clothes, backpacks, shoes, socks, whatever. It's going to go everywhere as soon as he's done with it. Brush, toothbrush. You'll find them all over the house. And then later, he'll be like, I don't know where my switch is. And I'm like, babe, where did you put it? and he'll be looking and looking and looking, and it's in between the couch cushions or what, wherever he stuffed it when he was done with it. And I'm like, all right, honey, you got to put it away. Don't put it down, put it away. Because that way, if it's in the right spot, because everything that he has a right spot, and if it's in the right spot, then he knows where to go and look. And so that's something that we're working on with him for sure, because for him, mental health wise, he gets himself really worked up when he can't find something. And he's like, I don't know where my brush is, and now I'm going to be late for school because I can't find my brush. And so he'll get himself really into a lather over things. And so we've had to talk to him about ways that he can work on getting things organized, putting them generally where they go. Like, at least put it back in the bathroom if it goes in the bathroom. At least put it on that end table if you're trying to, if it's something you need to charge, you know, whatever it is, like get it at least in the general area, if not in the exact right spot, to make it easier on himself so that he doesn't get himself so worked up. So I would say cleanliness, keeping your room clean, keeping your house clean, it comes back to what supports your mental health. And it's important to work with your own mental health provider to determine what will work best for you. For some people, like maybe for your husband, Deborah, you know, taking off cabinet doors so you can see what's in a cabinet could work for them. For some people, like me, it would drive me crazy to not have any cabinet doors. So, but if you're a very visual person and you're with someone who can stand that as well, then that's a solution that could work for you. You know, get a refrigerator with a clear, they have those refrigerators with like the glass door that you can see through. Whatever it is, there's a way to work something in a way that's going to be the most beneficial and supportive for your mental health. You just got to figure out what that is. But if you live with a partner, you have to figure that out with your partner. You can't do that in a vacuum. That's right. You gotta work together and figure that out together. So, okay, so I want to come back to hypnotherapy also. Well, I mean, all right, so can you use hypnotherapy for like, I want to be a cleaner, more neater, more organized person? Is that something that hypnotherapy can help with? Yeah.
Absolutely. More organized.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I might be making some appointments for my kids. So can you talk a little bit about some clients who've had really great breakthroughs or transformations through hypnotherapy? Just share some success stories with us.
Well, of course I can't give out names.
Oh, of course.
But there have been a couple of people that who I mentioned earlier were stuck in their homes. They couldn't leave. And now they're volunteering at different functions in the city and traveling about, driving about like nothing's wrong. There are some that were afraid to drive, that really got panic attacks, and now can drive just anywhere. Some that had phobias about driving over bridges, and now can, has no problem at all. People have quit smoking. I had one person with severe allergies to everything. This person had to sleep in their car because any fragrance in the house, they couldn't use fabric softener sheets, in the dryer. Couldn't use that. They bought a new dryer, and the insulation in the dryer forced them to put it in the garage because they couldn't take the smell.
Wow.
They couldn't take that new smell. And we were able to get him allergy free. So that he was living back in his house. Yes, through hypnotherapy.
Wow. Yep. So it was really kind of like a block in his brain somehow saying,
yes,
you're going to have, when we've talked about before, like your body will manifest things that your mind is thinking of, whether that's stress or something else. So does that really constitute an allergy, or is that just a stress reaction? I don't know the definitions of allergy versus that, but
Well, I mean, people have allergies. You know, you can have allergies to ragweed or
yeah,
to I don't know, whatever kind of pollen is out there, and an allergy is an allergy. You
yeah,
know, for this particular person being so highly allergic to everything, I knew was more a mental issue. You
yeah.
know, it was a stress body syndrome, a
Mhm.
stressor body syndrome.
Right, right.
So that's why we were able to be so successful with him, with this person.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh. Let's see what else. Um, Bedwetting.
Mhm.
We've been successful with that. Weight loss. Um, um, oh, it just was in my head and just flew right back out. We have some that deal with shame and guilt. You know,
Mhm.
we work with them through that. Um, Sexual problems, we help with that as well, which can be a little awkward at times, but you know, we work through it. And nail biting, hair pulling, eyebrow and eyelash pulling,
Mhm.
we work with that. Fear of everything, fear of
Yeah.
water, fear of heights, fear of success. Um, so, you know, raising self-esteem. We've had success stories in just about every area you can name.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we've been really fortunate.
Yeah, that's great. And there's another question from Pete on YouTube. He says, "Can hypnotherapy help with social anxiety?" And it sounds like, I mean, some of the
Oh,
things you
yeah,
just mentioned, but it wasn't that specific. So,
yeah, absolutely can. Social anxiety, um, it can handle anxiety. One,
mhm.
social anxiety can come from a lot of different root causes. So, and I take all of them into consideration, but it does so help with it.
Yeah. I mean, even just talking about the kind of agoraphobia type situations, like if it can help with that extremity, I feel like it could probably help with everything up to that point also, which is great.
Yep. Helps
All right.
people with public speaking.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one that a lot of people have trouble with too, is just being able to get up and speak in front of other people. Um, so that's good. That's great. That's something that could benefit my 17-year-old. All right, I'm gonna bring in my 10-year-old for cleanliness organization. I'm gonna bring in my 17-year-old. No, I'll let them figure that out later if they want help with that kind of thing. Of course, if they ask me for help with that kind of thing, I would set them up. But are there ethical guidelines or standards for hypnotherapists in particular? Is it a very regulated field?
It does not require licensure.
Mm.
And it's regulated as far as it's like a doctor taking the Hippocratic Oath,
Mhm.
you know, do no harm. Um, and it's basically the same thing, do no harm.
Yeah.
But it's up to the person, it's up to the individual. Um, you know, there are people out there that will tell you what you want to hear
Mhm.
to get your money and then not help with the thing, you
Yeah.
know. So it kind of gives hypnotherapy a bad name, and they
Right.
won't go out and find the right hypnotherapist. They gave it a one-time shot, got the wrong one, did not, you know, interview them correctly, or didn't ask the right questions. I'm not going to say interview them correctly. Just asked the right questions and just got burned.
Yeah.
So it gives hypnotherapy a bad name. And movies like The Hypnotist and, where, oh my gosh, I have never swung a watch in front of a person's face in my life and don't plan to. I don't plan to.
Yeah. And the same can be said for regular therapy too. Like, yes, there are some very specific standards for therapy in general, and you can make sure that they have all the right licenses and all that. But you can still have a bad experience, and if you're not aware that you can just stop going to that one, fire them, get a new one,
Sure.
it's something that can be really discouraging. That happened to me with my first experience with therapy, was a very negative one. And I didn't go back for years because of it, because I thought that's how all therapy was. So if it's your first exposure to hypnotherapy and it's a bad one, I would encourage you to seek out people who've had success as clients with hypnotherapy and ask them kind of what their experience was and compare it to your own. And then seek out a couple of different hypnotherapists and just see if maybe that person, maybe they're fine, maybe there's nothing, wrong with what they're doing, but maybe they're just not for you. And that's entirely possible with both therapy and hypnotherapy. Like, you can always work with someone who is good and reputable at what they do, but if you don't get along, you're not going to have the same results, I would think.
That's right.
How do you make sure that the folks that you work with feel safe and respected during their hypnotherapy sessions? I think you've mentioned a couple things along the way, but kind of how do you as a whole make sure that it's a safe environment?
Well, I record everything that I do, and it's saved on a HIPAA cloud, so I send the person that I'm doing the session with an MP3 of the hypnotherapy session so they can listen to it during the week.
Interesting.
Until our next session.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say about making somebody feel safe is that, I make sure to always look a person in the eye, the camera eye, and to tell the truth, always to tell the truth. Yes, I can help you. No, I can't. I think you might be better served doing this instead.
Mm-hmm.
I've recommended some that should see psychiatrists first before coming to me, because I knew that they were in the throes of serious depression, and they had some suicidal ideation. So I will always refer them out to a psychiatrist first to get that under control. So they've got to be able to trust that you're doing things for their benefit. And how do you prove that other than just doing the right thing every time?
Yeah.
Every time. So.
Right. I feel like working with different providers is another thing. Just, do you typically, you said you refer them out for that first. Do you typically have them do therapy at the same time as hypnotherapy, or is it really one before the other? Or is there any situation where you might combine a therapeutic modality aside from hypnotherapy, either into the session or parallel to one another?
Usually someone will come to me that some are seeing a therapist, and I'll have them get a release form from that therapist, because I want to make sure the therapist knows that they're coming into me for hypnotherapy, and that there are no contraindications to what that therapist is doing and what we'll be doing. I don't refer them to a therapist, a talk therapist. I do CBT and DBT, the same thing as a therapist, but the only referral I go out to is either a medical doctor or a psychiatrist, somebody that I know is in danger and really needs to seek help.
Interesting. So you said, you have them check with their therapist, make sure there aren't any contraindications for doing hypnotherapy, what would a contraindication be in that kind of situation?
If they were doing CBT and then I started them on CBT, normally that therapist will let me know what form of therapy they're working on.
Gotcha.
But I've never had one say, no, I don't think this will work out.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily like this would not be good to start hypnotherapy. It's like, hey, we're already doing this part over here, so don't add it another time over here. Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
And then I want to ask you specifically about the therapeutic imagery master piece that was in your bio. So can you talk about how you incorporate imagery techniques a little bit? That's fascinating to me.
It's no more than telling a story in a way that brings something to life for you.
Yeah.
It's when I use a deepening technique, I will take you on a journey somewhere using I always use therapeutic imagery because I'm a natural born storyteller, but I just find it's more effective because people can relate to it. If I'm taking you, I'll always ask in the questionnaire if they have a fear of water, heights, closed-in spaces, because I don't want to use imagery that's going to cause fear.
Yeah.
So I'll check those things out, and then I may take you on a journey, out on an ocean or on a beach or in a log cabin somewhere with a crackling fire when it's snowing outside. It helps that person get out of their own way and just, it's like almost like reading a good book,
That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, it's like whenever you're reading a book and you're putting yourself into that spot. That's great.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, because I know we have at least one person here who has a really hard time when reading books, conjuring those pictures in her head, and I know lots of people struggle with that. There's a word for that. I don't remember what the word for it is. But what about people who have a hard time? If you say picture a crackling fire, they cannot conjure an image in their head of a crackling fire. What do you do in that case?
If they can't visualize or imagine, then I have them pretend. Have you ever seen a fire? Yeah, everybody's seen a fire. I'm not going to say everybody. People living in igloos typically no. But most people have seen a fire. So I'll have them pretend, or I will go into detail of what that fire looks like, so that you may not be able to visualize it in your head, but if I paint that picture clear enough, if I say it's a blue dog, you're going to see a blue dog. I just have to paint it clear enough. But I know up front whether you have problems visualizing or not. Yeah. So I'll know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's good that you can do it for both people who can visualize and people who can't, because aphantasia, thank you. That's the name of it. That's the thing I was trying to think of. I was thinking like synesthesia, but isn't that where you see sounds or something? Anyway, that's a different thing. Aphantasia is the word I was trying to think of. Thank you. But yeah, like there are people who can't. If you say something, if you're describing something and you're like, picture a psychedelic mushroom, they can't picture it in their head. Even when reading a book, even reading about it. So yeah, appreciate that you have these different ways of kind of connecting them with themselves. That's great. So here's another great question from the chat from Bite Mark. Have you done any Have you done any EMDR training? And do you feel it is actually significantly different from hypnotherapy?
EMDR training, I do what's called chakra light therapy, which is similar to EMDR. I cannot do EMDR because it requires licensure, and you have to be a psychiatrist or a licensed social worker in order to do EMDR. I think it's for somebody who's experienced a lot of trauma, it can be significantly life-changing. I recommend it to people who've experienced a lot of trauma.
Yeah. So can you describe chakra light? What is that?
Sure. An EMDR light, for example, moves from left to right, and then you adjust the speed of the light, judging from the person's the speed of which they talk, because it tells you how fast their brain is running. If they talk over themselves, it's running really fast. So they're going to adjust the light, and they're different colors. Normally for EMDR, they'll use one color light and it moves back and forth. For people who have been traumatized, in some places, for anxiety, for example, somebody that is very anxious about the fear of flying, I ask them, where does that fear begin? Where does the anxiety begin? Before you leave the house? When you know you have to book a flight? Not until you get to the airport, okay? They'll tell me when they start feeling anxious. Let's say it's when they reach the airport. Where do you feel that anxiety? So they'll say in my chest, or they'll, in my stomach. That's a chakra point. Every chakra point, there's 7, every chakra point has a different color. So I will use a light that correlates to that chakra.
Okay.
And do the eye movement for them, so that anxiety, because I'm taking them back to that place. They're in the airport. They're waiting. They've just called your flight, and you're going to be boarding that plane. That anxiety they're feeling it in the pit of their stomach. I'm addressing that chakra point, the pit of their stomach. So that light is the same exact color as that chakra. And that is chakra light therapy.
Okay, interesting. I don't know why that was not the thing that I had in my head that it was. So not that I could describe what I had in my head that it might be, but yeah, I mean that's really cool. That's neat. I like that. So when you were going through a lot of the loss that you were going through, I know you're in a very dark place, but were there any things that you did to practice self-compassion or increase self-care during that time?
I would say no. The only thing I did was when I finally got to a point that said, I have to do something. Yeah. I have to see somebody. This is going on for too long. I couldn't talk to anyone. I would cry at the drop of a hat. Nothing interested me at all. And like I said, I could have cared less if I took a breath the next day. I really didn't care. And I knew it was time to do something. It had just gone on too long. So self-care was, I had to force myself to shower every day, and to force myself to eat, even, if it was chicken broth, something to put in my stomach. I had to force myself to do those things because it just was not something that came easily.
Yeah.
At all.
I think that's a really common struggle, especially in the depths of something like depression or grief. That's a really common, it's hard to take care of yourself when you are struggling so hard just to get out of bed every day. So what advice would you have for someone who is struggling with that piece of just prioritizing their own well-being in the midst of adversity? What would you say to them?
Have the courage, if it's grief that they're struggling with, have the courage to see yourself through the eyes of the loved one you lost and shower for them. Just force yourself out of bed, and take a shower for them. They wouldn't want you all stinky, hugging up on them. And I know my kids wouldn't have, so I shower for them. You have to keep your health up in some way. Why? Because there's a purpose that you're here on this earth, and it's not just for suffering. There is a reason that you're going through all this, and it may not make sense now, but it will in times to come. This too shall pass. It's not going to stop stinging. It just will not sting as hard as time goes on. But time does not heal all wounds. Sometimes there's a hole that's left in you. That hole will always be there. But you can work with a hole. Donuts work. I know I eat them. Donuts work, and there's a hole in them. So, you have to push yourself for those who are left behind, because there are people that love you. There are people that care about you, friends or family. And if you feel like you've got no one that loves you or cares about whether you live, breathe, anything, call me up.
Yeah.
And I will talk you through it. No charge. Call me up.
I like the thought of like doing it for the one that you lost also, because even on my darkest days, like I did things for my kids. Like I still had to function because they still had to be places and they still had to get fed. And it's like, well, I have to sit down with them, and if they see me not eating, they're going to think something's wrong, or they're going to know something is wrong. So I did a lot of things for them. And in the case of grief and loss, it's like, okay, if I die tomorrow, I don't want them to be suffering like that. Like I do want them to go on with their lives. And so if they have that lens of what would my mom want me to be feeling right now? What would my mom want me to do in this case? I think that's a really good perspective to kind of just try on and see if it helps. And if it doesn't help, if using a different perspective doesn't help, absolutely call a mental health professional. Absolutely do that. And maybe do that anyway. Obviously, do what's going to suit you the best. But yeah, there's all kinds of hotlines. There are people you can call. You can just call up whoever's local to you. Call up a church. Even if you don't go to church, call up a church. They've got resources. There's all kinds of ways to get you some help and get you some connection into the things around you. But yeah, I like that.
Because somebody cares that you're on this planet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're doubting that and you're listening to this, know that I care. I care that you're on this planet. So there you go. You've got at least 2 people right here.
That's right. That's right.
We absolutely care. All right, so we're getting to our wrap-up points. We've got 2 questions here that I want to make sure to ask, that we try to ask every time. The first one is, what is your favorite life hack?
My favorite life hack.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Ooh. I'm such an habitual creature that what is a life hack?
It could be anything.
A good question.
I mean, it could be like I use a little kid's luggage tag on my luggage to make it really visible and less likely that someone's going to steal it. Because if they think it's for a little kid, what would they want with it? So, I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be super special.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I use Christmas ribbon on my luggage at the airport. Yeah. And I use
bright
red or bright green, so I can spot that sucker coming, from a mile away. I can see that thing. And I make it big bow, a big bow.
Yeah.
Not just this little tag hanging out. No, that's my luggage. That ugly thing coming down, that's mine.
That's me. Yeah, if somebody else goes to grab for it, you're like, I do not think so. Because they all look the same, right? Like my bag, I've got a blue bag and my 10-year-old has a red bag and my 17-year-old has a green bag. And it's like, everyone has a blue bag or a purple bag or a green bag or whatever. Like, okay. But does everyone's have a big tiger head on it? Does everyone's have a
That's
Christmas
right.
ribbon on it? You know? So, yeah, luggage always winds up looking the same when it's on that belt. So, yeah.
I
that's good.
know. I've tried to find plaid luggage, but can't, or orange or something
Yeah.
really funky,
Something
really
bright.
cool and funky, but mm-mm.
Yeah.
Black. It's usually black or blue.
There's a the last time I went, where did I go last time? I think when I went to Virginia Beach, there was someone who had hot pink luggage. And it like all
Wow.
matched. It all stacked up. Everything that she had stacked up nice and neat. Her carry-on was hot pink. She had a bag. She was walking out in front of me. She had a big bag that was hot pink. She had a little bag that was hot pink. Her purse was hot pink. I was like, there you go. That's what you need.
That was a Barbie chick. That was a
Probably.
Barbie chick.
Probably. I love it. We have bag straps that go around ours, a neon green and orange. See, there you go. Everybody's got something for luggage. Okay, well,
That's
if y'all
cool.
have any other questions related to hypnotherapy, make sure you pop them into the chat because we are at our last question here. So, if you, Deborah, could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental health, mental illnesses, or disabilities, what would it be?
It would be that people with mental health issues, if people could see them the way they look at others that have diabetes or cancer or some type of blood disorder, it's a disease.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that's treatable, but they're normal people. Just because, people look at schizophrenics like they're lepers. They don't want to be anywhere near them. And this person is just ill. They have a chemical imbalance of the brain. And if they would just look at these people with mental health issues like a normal person that just needs some help.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Most definitely. Well, Bite Mark says, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot and had fun. I will echo that. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'll open up the mic and just kind of give it to you, Deborah, if there's anything you want to talk about that you're working on, anything that we didn't get to cover that you want to make sure you mention. I'll post your socials one more time in the chat for everyone to connect with you, but the floor is yours.
Well, if anybody is interested in reading books, I have 3 new ones that are out. They're called, the premise of the first one is called, and I hope this is PG-13. They're all
fine.
called, okay, Make Shit Happen. The first one is How to Unleash Real Power into Your Life. The second is How to Unclutter Your Life. And the third is Improving Your Memory. So those are available in ebook, hardcover, and audio books. So it was such a pleasure being on your program. You do a fabulous job with questions, and I appreciated those that came from your listeners as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And everyone's laughing, saying, imagine Mama getting a PG-13 rating. You have to click through that you're over 18 to even get to this stream. So you are just fine. But yes, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, what I do would not be possible without experts like you. So I appreciate you taking the time out today and joining us here. It's been a lovely, lovely conversation.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope y'all found the conversation with Deborah LeBlanc as powerful as I did. Hypnotherapy might not be the first thing people think of when they're struggling with anxiety, grief, or even just everyday stress. But as we heard today, it's a real, practical way to tap into your own strength and start making changes. I really appreciate how open and raw Deborah has been about her own journey, from facing loss to hitting rock bottom and then finding a way to rise through all of it. If you've ever felt like life's just thrown too much at you to handle, you're definitely not alone. Whether it's through hypnotherapy or another approach, there's always a way to keep going, even when it feels impossible. What I took from this conversation is that we all have tools inside of us that we might not even realize. Hypnotherapy is just one way to unlock that. Maybe it's not for everyone, but if you're dealing with stress, trauma, or just feeling stuck, it's worth exploring as an option. The important thing is that you find what works for you. And like Deborah said, healing takes time. It's okay if the road is long as you're taking steps forward. Now, if this episode spoke to you or made you curious about hypnotherapy or anything else we touched on, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message, drop a comment, or find me on social media. I'm MommaFoxFire everywhere. Let's keep the conversation going. And if you're enjoying the show, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to Even Tacos Fall Apart, and leave a review. Reviews really help more people find the show and become part of this amazing community we're building together. Also, don't forget to check out the show notes for Deborah's books, her socials, and links to more information about hypnotherapy if you want to dive deeper. And of course, if you want to help support the podcast, head over to my Patreon page where you can get access to all kinds of stuff, shout outs, art, all sorts of stuff, and much more. Thanks again for spending time with me today. Remember, even when it feels like everything's falling apart, you have the strength to rebuild. Take care of yourselves, and I will catch you in the next episode.